Ever hear of the half-inch prophecy? Probably not, at least by that term. It's actually from a book by that title written about this particular verse in the Bible. That author is the one that coined that phrase, the half-inch prophecy. That verse measures 1/2 inch in an average Bible. This prophecy tells us about 5 locations that the Messiah will visit during his time on earth. A person who meets all 5 of these indicators, the locations, has a high probability of being that foretold Messiah. This half-inch prophecy is in the book of Micah, chapter 7, verse 12. Quote, "In that day also he shall come even to thee from Assyria, and from the fortified cities, and from the fortress even to the river, and from sea to sea, and from mountain to mountain." End quote. I have applied numbers in the text to each travel segment of this prophecy so that we can track them in this video. So now we have, quote, "In that day also he shall come even to thee, first from Assyria, and second from the fortified cities, and third from the fortress even to the river, and fourth from sea to sea, and fifth from mountain to mountain." End quote. Note that I've numbered these travel elements, but they are not necessarily sequential, as we will see in this video. Now I have a surprise for you. This prophecy in Micah chapter 7 verse 12 has been fulfilled. The Christ or Messiah of the latter days has appeared already. He was born in 1817 in Persia and passed away in 1892 in the Holy Land, now known as Israel. His divine name or title is Bahá'u'lláh. Bahá'u'lláh, which means the glory of God. Bahá'u'lláh. This is a map of the Middle East as it was around the year 1850 Common Era. The green area on the right is Persia, now known as Iran. The medium brown or tan areas are the Ottoman Empire. The red and yellow line from Tehran on the right goes to Baghdad, then up to Constantinople, then a little further north to Adrianople, which is now known as Edirne, then by sea down to Egypt, then to Palestine, as it was known in the 1800s. This line shows the travels of Bahá'u'lláh as a prisoner of the Persian government at first, then as a prisoner of the Ottoman Empire. I have enlarged that map here. Bahá'u'lláh was born in Tehran, Persia in 1817. Note Tehran on the right side of the map in the center, circled in red. Bahá'u'lláh became a disciple of a young man called the Bab, spelled B-A-B, who proclaimed that he was the forerunner to one whom God would make manifest to the world soon, the Messiah. Bahá'u'lláh was not yet aware that the divine entity was himself. That came later. The government and Muslim clergy of Persia were incensed by the claims of the Bab. Bab means the gate or door, by the way, in English. Many thousands of people became his followers. Some estimates are in the hundreds of thousands. He was imprisoned for about 3 years of the 6 total years of his earthly ministry. Then the government killed the Bab on July 9, 1850. The Bab's followers, called Babis, were then persecuted by the government. Many thousands died, some by very gruesome methods. Bahá'u'lláh was imprisoned in the latter part of 1852, during which time he received a vision that made it known to him that he was the one that the Bab had foretold, the one whom God shall make manifest. He was the new Messiah, the Christ returned. But he kept that a secret for about 10 more years before he revealed his divine station. When Baha'u'lláh was released from this black pit prison, he was exiled by the Shah of Persia to Baghdad. Baghdad was in the former territory of the Assyrian Empire of old. It was now part of the Ottoman Empire in the 1800s. Baha'u'lláh was then in the jurisdiction of the Ottoman Empire. That's the brown or dark tan areas on the map, if you recall. Note that Baha'u'lláh was of noble birth. He descended from the last Sasanian Persian Empire king, Yazdegerd III, and his father, Mirza Buzurg, had been a well-known, respected member of the Persian court. Buzurg died in 1839 before Baha'u'lláh became a follower of the Bab. From Baha'u'llah's descent from the kings of the Sasanian dynasty of Persian kings, Baha'u'lláh was a true prince of Persia. After Baha'u'lláh became a devoted follower of the Bab, he was also persecuted, as were the other Babis. But his relationship to the noble families may have kept him from being killed. Instead, he may have been put in the Black Pit prison, then exiled out of Persia. Baha'u'lláh had been a very wealthy person, but all his properties and wealth were confiscated when he was exiled. During the 10 years Baha'u'lláh spent in the area of Baghdad, he spent 2 of those 10 years in seclusion in the mountains in the Kurdish area northeast of Baghdad, near Sulaymaniyah, on the mountain of Sargalu, shown here as a yellow triangle. This is a map of modern Iraq, with Iran to its right there. I just thought I'd show you more specifically where that mountain is located. It's, as I stated, northeast of Baghdad, near Sulaymaniyah, and the name of the mountain is Sargalu. It's in the green circled area. After about 10 years in the Baghdad area, Persian officials became concerned about the growing Babi religion and the high esteem the local officials had for Baha'u'lláh. Baha'u'lláh had become a default leader of the Babis since so many of the Bab's other disciples had been killed in the persecutions in Persia. The Persian officials asked the Ottoman government to move Baha'u'lláh further away from Persia in order to disrupt this new Babi faith. In 1863, notice was given to Baha'u'lláh that he was being exiled again to Constantinople this time. Constantinople is now known as Istanbul. The Babi community gathered together just before Baha'u'lláh and a small group of people were to be sent to Constantinople. At that time, Baha'u'lláh, for the first time in public, announced his divine identity, that he was the one foretold by the Bab and the many prophecies in the Bible as the Messiah of the latter days, the returned Christ. That was in April of 1863. At that time, and since, those who recognized this claim of Baha'u'lláh as the latest manifestation of God were called Baha'is and were no longer called Babis. The faith that resulted out of the Bab and Baha'u'llah's revelations is called the Baha'i faith. The trek from Baghdad northwest to the seaport of Samsun on the Black Sea was arduous and under guard by Ottoman troops. It was a forced exile. In Samsun, a port on the Black Sea, Baha'u'lláh and his companions were put on a ship for the final leg of the trip to Constantinople. Apparently the Sultan and others in the court of the capital of the Ottoman Empire held expectations that Baha'u'lláh would fall in line with the ways of the court, ways that were not of high standards of truth and justice. Baha'u'lláh did not play along, earning the Sultan's and others' displeasure. Baha'u'lláh failed to become corrupt as they were. After a few months, the Sultan again exiled Bahá'u'lláh away from Constantinople to Adrianople, which is now known as Edirne. Again, the regard of Bahá'u'lláh by locals and even others grew, which displeased the Ottoman government and the clergy. The Sultan again exiled Bahá'u'lláh and his few companions to the prison city of Akka, Palestine. Their objectives in this were that Bahá'u'lláh would die, they hoped, in that foul city, and his new religion with him. Bahá'u'lláh and his small group were put on a ship in Gallipoli and sent off to Palestine. They left Adrianople, Gallipoli, on August 5th of the year 1868 and landed in the small port town of Haifa on August 31st of 1868. Then they were put aboard a small boat and sailed across Haifa Bay to the Sea Gate entrance to the walled city of Akka. So Baha'u'lláh became the prisoner of Akka. The prison city of Akka was known as the foulest of areas, and it was even described as being so foul of air that birds that flew over it would die. And it was fully expected that Baha'u'lláh and maybe many of his companions would die very quickly after becoming prisoners there. And just a little FYI here, this area of the world, Akka, is in the ancient land of Canaan. I thought I'd put a little explanation of the name Akka for this city here. AKKA, Akka, is the Arabic term for the city. ACRE, Accra, is an old name for it that was basically introduced by the Westerners who went there as the Crusaders to supposedly save Christianity from the spread of Islam. They failed, as we know. But Akka was a main headquarters for the Crusaders. It eventually became the capital city of these Crusaders in what was called the Kingdom of Jerusalem, also known as the Kingdom of Acre. Between the years 1099 and 1291, Common Era, it lasted almost 200 years. Never heard of it? Look it up. The Hebrew term for the city is Akko, A-K-K-O. On maps, you may see any of these names for Akka. There was even a time, long ago in ancient times, when it was called Ptolemais, temporarily renamed by the Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt during their rule of the area of Palestine, current Israel, approximately around 300 to 200 BCE. Now, just to help you understand where Akka is located, I've provided this map. The map on the left shows the eastern Mediterranean Sea and Middle East. The small red square is enlarged on the right to show where the prison city of Akka is located. See the red arrow pointing to Akka. Note that in our time it is no longer serving as a prison city. Note that Haifa is on Mount Carmel and its foothills. It is across the bay from Akka. This is an old photo of that sea gate into the prison city of Akka. The only other entrance into the city at that time was one land gate. This is a photo that I took of a photo that was on a display board showing the prison city of Akka as it was in Palestine. This is a photo probably taken around World War I from the air. Now this photo is yet another aerial photo that shows the density of the population in that city. And this photo is a closer look at some of the walls around the city from the seaside. And this one, taken from a distance away, shows a more panoramic view of the walls of this ancient city. And yet another, more recent view from the air. Note that Napoleon Bonaparte attempted to capture Acre in 1799, but failed miserably and retreated back to Egypt. This is an old photo of what is now called the Citadel building in Acre. At the time of Bahá'u'lláh, it was used as a prison. He and a few of his family members and companions were imprisoned on the top floor. Bahá'u'llah's cell is shown in the upper right. This is an artist's painting of the small town of Haifa and Mount Carmel in roughly the 1830s. For your information, Mount Carmel is where the prophet Elijah lived in a cave in ancient times. After Bahá'u'lláh was finally released from the prison in the Citadel building, he was put under house arrest. Then, after some time, he was allowed to leave the city of Acre, but could only travel a few miles away from Acre. He was never allowed to leave the area of Acre again. He passed away in 1892 and is buried just outside of Acre. Note that he lived for a short period of time on Mount Carmel. Next, we will compare the Micah verse with the travels of Bahá'u'lláh through his forced exiles to see if Bahá'u'lláh truly fulfills this prophecy. Here's that list again of these elements of the prophecy that the Messiah of the latter days will accomplish. He will come from Assyria, come from fortified cities, meaning more than one fortified city, travel from a fortress to a river, travel from sea to sea, and also travel from mountain to mountain. I will be using this table that has these 5 elements listed in column B. As we review each element, I'll enter the circumstances of Bahá'u'llah's travels and life that fulfill that element. We start with number 1 on that list, that the Messiah of the latter days will come from Assyria. The first part, from Assyria. Micah promised that the Lord of salvation would come from this area of the world, Assyria. Bahá'u'lláh was born in Persia. He became a disciple of the Bab. The Bab's followers were imprisoned, tortured, persecuted, and killed. Bahá'u'lláh was imprisoned, tortured, then as a prisoner, exiled to Baghdad in 1853. This map shows the ancient kingdom of Assyria, that's shaded in light green, around the year 700 BC. Note present-day Baghdad, where Bahá'u'lláh was exiled to by the Persian king and religious leaders, is in the area of ancient Assyria. As you can see, the blue arrow is pointing to it, and it is within that green shaded area that is Assyria. Just before being exiled again to Constantinople this time, Bahá'u'lláh announced to a large crowd of family, fellow followers of the Bab, and other inhabitants of Baghdad that he was the one prophesied by the Bab, the one the Bab called him whom God shall make manifest, who was also the promised one of all the faiths of humankind, including the returned Christ Spirit. Thus he was now officially, from this public declaration in the land of ancient Assyria, the Messiah of the latter days, the Christ returned. The verse from Micah stated that the Messiah would come from Assyria. Now I've enlarged the entry into row 1 so we can read it more easily. In column C, note that I have stated the fact that Bahá'u'lláh was exiled to Baghdad in 1853, where he declared his station as the promised one 10 years later in 1863, and Baghdad is in the territory of the ancient land of Assyria. On to element number 2. The Messiah will come from fortified cities. These 4 cities, circled here, in which Baha'u'lláh lived during his lifetime, were all walled, fortified cities: Baghdad, Constantinople, Adrianople, and Akka. This is a drawing of the city of Baghdad. It's from a Wikipedia article on Baghdad. The design shows Baghdad with a round walled center. So Baghdad counts as a walled city, at least at one time. And this is a photo showing a part of the walls around the more ancient parts of present-day Istanbul, formerly known as Constantinople. Baha'u'lláh lived there about 4 months before Sultan Abdul Aziz exiled him to Adrianople. Here's a photo of some ruins of the walled city of Adrianople, now called Idaran. Apparently some sections of it are still intact. Here's a photo of Akka again, showing the walls that surround the ancient parts of it. Obviously, Akka is a fortified city. The walls have been breached in several locations in modern times. As mentioned, Napoleon Bonaparte tried to conquer Akka by bombarding it with cannons, but he failed. The summation for element number 2, it states that the Messiah would travel from the fortified cities. I've enlarged the entry here. He was exiled from Persia to Baghdad, then further exiled to Istanbul, then Constantinople, then to Adrianople, now Idaran, then to Akka. All were fortified, walled cities. Thus, Baha'u'lláh most definitely met this element of the prophecy. Element number 3 of the prophecy, from the fortress to the river. After a long period of time, Baha'u'lláh was finally released from the fortress prison, although not allowed to leave the area of Akka. For his enjoyment and relief from the restrictions, after being let out of the walled city, he journeyed to a nearby river called Na'aman. Here is a map of the area of Israel showing the rivers. It was known as Palestine at the time that Baha'u'lláh was there, of course, and part of the Ottoman Empire. The small box near the top is showing the area in northern Israel where Akka and Haifa are located. Now I've enlarged that small red box to the right so that you can more clearly see the Akka and Haifa area, and the river is in it. Now I have put a small blue box lightly highlighted with yellow to show where the river Na'aman is located. Back to our table, element number 3 about the Messiah going from a fortress to a river. Late in Baha'u'llah's life, after he was finally released from the prison city of Akka, he was allowed to leave the walled area of the city. He visited the nearby river of Na'aman. The next prophecy element, number 4, the Messiah would travel from sea to sea. Baha'u'lláh, during his forced exiles, traveled on the Black Sea and on the Mediterranean Sea. We will go back to our handy-dandy map to illustrate this. Note that the Black Sea at the top center of the map and the Mediterranean Sea in the left center. Remember when we discussed Baha'u'llah's second exile from Baghdad with the endpoint being Constantinople? The group of exiles stopped in the port of Samsun on the Black Sea and boarded a steamship to be taken to Constantinople over the Black Sea. Then Sultan Abdul Aziz and others in the capital city became concerned about the presence of this righteous person and the local people becoming affected by his very compelling presence and teachings. So the Sultan exiled him again, this time to Adrianople, where he spent about 5 years. Then after those 5 years, the Sultan banished him to Akka, Palestine. They were boarded upon a ship in Gallipoli, which is not far from Adrianople. They sailed off to Akka, making a few stops along the way. They arrived in Akka on August 31st, 1868. Here's our edition of Baha'u'llah's fulfillment of Micah's prophecy, element number 4. He traveled in his exiles from the Black Sea to Constantinople, then later over the Mediterranean Sea on his way to Akka, Palestine. Thus, Baha'u'lláh did fulfill this part of the prophecy. Finally, we get to that last element, number 5. The Messiah will travel from mountain to mountain. Here is an illustration of the mountains that Baha'u'lláh lived upon for periods in his life. The mountain Sargalu is represented by the triangle on the right that's labeled number 1. After Baha'u'lláh had been exiled to Baghdad by the Shah of Persia, for 2 of the 10 years he lived in that area, he withdrew to live in solitude. Perhaps he, like Jesus the Christ before him, needed a period of time to spiritually prepare himself for what he knew would be his future, a future of suffering and restrictions. Then in his later years on earth, after having finally been released from his imprisonment and house arrest in Akka, he lived on the side of Mount Carmel for a period of time. That's the triangle with the number 2 on it. Thought you might be interested to know that the word Carmel means the vineyard of God. So we enter this in the last row of column C to note that Baha'u'lláh traveled from the mountain of Sargalu in the Sulaymaniyah area of modern Iraq. Then later in his life, he spent some time living on Mount Carmel in the Holy Land. My conclusion is that these 5 prophecies, or 5 elements of a prophecy, in Micah chapter 7, verse 12, have been completely fulfilled by Baha'u'lláh through the exiles forced upon him by first the government of Persia and then by the Ottoman Empire. So I think it has been proven that this half-inch prophecy has been fulfilled by Baha'u'lláh. Now let's talk about the laws of probability. How likely is it that a single person would fulfill all 5 elements of this prophecy in his lifetime through events not under his control? Even if you remove the 5th one, the from mountain to mountain element, because Baha'u'lláh did have some amount of choice in residing on these mountains, even if we discount that one, it remains that 4 of these elements were very unlikely to occur to one single person during a lifetime when he had no choice in his travels. Thus, fulfillment of these elements of the prophecy adds great weight to their being fulfilled by the design of an outside force. Could that be God who arranged all this? Or his proxy, the manifestation for this new era, Baha'u'lláh himself? Add Baha'u'llah's having fulfilled this half-inch prophecy to the many other Bible prophecy he has fulfilled, the probabilities that the totality is so beyond mere chance that it would be impossible for one person to have fulfilled so many Bible prophecies unless he was a part of the supreme power that designed and put in place all of these prophecies. On the topic of mathematical probabilities, another video of mine examines the many other prophecies fulfilled by the Bab, Baha'u'lláh, and the Baha'i faith regarding the mathematical probabilities of their fulfilling the Bible prophecies foretelling the appearance of the Messiah of the latter days. If you are interested in mathematical probabilities of all this, watch this video too. Its title is Bible Prophecy Fulfillment and Mathematical Probabilities. Subtitle, Scientific Proof that God exists and that He has sent manifestations of Himself to guide humanity, including the new Messiah of the Second Advent. My channel name is at the bottom there. It's at Integral Destiny 9, all one word with no spaces between the characters. You'll also find this video on my channel titled Christ Has Returned. I have lots of other videos about how Bible prophecies of the return of Christ have been fulfilled by Bahá'u'lláh, the Bab, and the Baha'i faith. Please check them out. And there's my channel name again at the bottom. There's lots more information in this video if you choose to continue watching. But if you are waffling, thinking of exiting the video, I thought I'd provide a few resources now for you doubters, for you to investigate further if you choose. I'll also provide this information and more at the end of the video for those who continue watching. The top 3 websites listed here are official Baha'i Faith sites. The top one is the website that gives information about the world Baha'i community. The second one is the free online library of many sacred and authoritative texts of the Baha'i faith. The third is the official website of the Baha'is of the United States. The bottom one is a blog of articles written by Baha'is on a variety of religious and spiritual topics. But note that this last one, the bottom one, is not an official website of the Baha'i faith. And here is that book again as a good source of information, Bahá'u'lláh and the New Era by J.E. Esselmont. You can read it online or download a copy for free. And you go to this website that's on the screen. You can pause the video to write it down. Just for your information, this is the book titled The Half-Inch Prophecy, written by William Sears, that revealed this obscure prophecy in Micah chapter 7 verse 12 to me. The book is apparently out of print now. It may be available online by book resellers if you are interested. Thank you for watching. Please note that this production is not an official production of the Baha'i Faith community. It was written, produced, and narrated by me alone. Contact me at that email address if you have any questions. All copyright protections are claimed. Do not change any information, slide, diagram, or narration without my permission. And please do not charge a fee to anyone for viewing this video or any part of it. I do not make any money from these videos. I consider this a service and a gift to my fellow human beings.